Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I am James Ham. Joining me on the road from Santa Clara 49ers training camp, Fox 40, Sean Cunningham. What's going on, Sean?
What's up, guys? I'm good, man. It was a bit of a busy day, but we made it. Had some little technical problems, but I'm here. I'm actually staring at Levi Stadium. Let me see if I can show this real quick. That's Chris.
Oh,
I
there's
don't know if you all
Chris.
know Chris Tavares yet. If you're not following him, you should. He's the new Jim Crandall over at Channel 40.
All right. Now Sean is trying to show us. Let's see if he's broken his connection and his phone.
Way out there. Do you see it? I don't know if you can see.
No, we couldn't
Yeah,
see it at
maybe I
all.
won't show. Couldn't
Yeah.
see it. Let's give it one more try, shall we? How about that? Can you see it out there?
Oh, yeah. Now we can see it. Look at that. Live here.
Yeah.
Sean is in Santa Clara taking a look at Levi Stadium. All
Yeah, man.
right, let's do
Been
this.
a busy day.
Brendan has gone to the River Cats game. So
He's gonna
he's got.
he's gonna see Brandon Crawford tonight.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, Sean, you're a big Gigantes fan.
sure am.
What a horrible day for the San Francisco Giants. The Major League Baseball trade deadline has come and gone, and the Giants got worse, and their people in their division got much better. Not a good thing for the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah, like I was trying to think of who the Giants' big three are, and I guess it would be like Logan Webb, Carlos Rodon because they didn't trade him, and then maybe it's like Brandon Crawford because he was so good last year. But then you look at the Padres and they got okay, Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, and they just had Juan Soto, and then of course you look at the Dodgers who I despise, and they've got Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, and just 1 through 9 is just all stars, and
I think they
yeah,
added Joey
man.
Gallo today, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they needed him. Like they needed him. Are you kidding me?
That's awesome. That's awesome.
It wasn't
Um,
necessary, but it's tough being a Giants fan. But they're still within reach of the wild card, and their GM says, "Hey, let's keep going for that." They won the World Series once when they won the wild card, so this team
well,
ain't winning the World Series, pal.
Yeah, that ain't happening. We'll have to wait and see what happens to them. But like, I've got the Oakland A's game on, and they just gave up a run, and like, oh, this is the top of the third. So in the bottom of the second, they gave up a run where the third baseman flew a ball over the first baseman's head, and then the shortstop on just like a just easy routine ground ball to short threw the ball into the stands as well to give up a run. Yeah. It's good. I mean
That's
that I think that's what they're trying for. That's the plan, right?
that's the plan. Just like now, as a Giants fan, I can set my sights on like the likes of like Aaron Judge and Otani, and neither one will happen. But as an A's fan, it's like, my God, man! Like every year it comes around, it's like, oh, Frankie Montas and Lou Trevino gone for a bunch of peanuts and guys that may or may not pan out and prospects. I feel for you. It's tough being any A's fan. I feel for.
Yeah, losing Frankie Montas is one thing, but losing Lou Trevino, actually, it almost made losing Montas like worth it. Like Lou Trevino is just not a good baseball player.
Right, he's
I'll
not
go on the
good.
record right now. He's just not a good baseball player. I mean, I watched a game the other day. They brought him in the ninth to close in like a one-run game, and he walked in with like a 6.66 ERA, and I don't think it got better, and that's worst.
That's Satan's work right there, right?
It
It's
is.
the,
It is
the
the
six
devil.
six six.
Fruits of the devil is Lou Trevino and his the straightest fastball you've ever seen. Yeah, he's out there throwing batting practice.
Who would you
Um,
rather have, Lou Trevino or Hunter Strickland? Sorry for the baseball talk. I know it's going to piss people off.
yeah, I'm probably going Hunter Strickland. I'm saying anyone but Lou Trevino,
Okay.
just because I mean it's just like throwing straight gas. Like how many people have to hit the ball really far against you before you actually try to get some movement on the ball? I don't know. All right, so we're gonna do things a lot different tonight, just because Sean is on the road, and we'll try to keep this thing to 45 minutes to an hour, and give you guys some content. Again, Brendan is away. Brendan is at the River Cats game, which clearly Vivek Ranadive sent him some tickets, and he's going, and being bought off right now by soon to be ownership of the River Cats, Vivek Ranadive. I'm glad I'm at home where at least I can hide from the sun and the air conditioning. DB has arrived, Sean. Just so you know, just in case things get awkward.
What up, DB?
What up, DB? He's
I
here.
hope his family's okay. Yeah, he gets irritated if I don't. It's like he's gonna off his family if I don't acknowledge him. So I'll
That,
acknowledge him.
that's not good. That's not good.
No, it's not.
Sean, it was kind of a dark weekend.
Oh, oh yeah.
Like the Bill Russell thing hit early. What was it? Sunday morning. And then Lieutenant Uhura from Star Trek passed away as well, which again just two like titans of change in our country. People who have done amazing things outside of basketball or outside of being on a TV show. But what are your thoughts on Bill Russell? I never had the opportunity to meet Bill, but I definitely was in the building multiple times with him. It just never quite right type of atmosphere to sit down and have a chat with him. But you've done this a little bit longer than me, so what were your thoughts?
Man, I've been around Bill Russell a lot, and it really had nothing to do with basketball. Um, it had everything to do with, as many of you probably already know, is my upbringing coming up and being around a lot of celebrity golf. Celebrity golf tournaments is kind of where a lot of this started for me. And I realized, wow, look at all these media people getting paid to go to beautiful places and interact with some of the biggest names in sports and entertainment and get paid for it. And that was such a huge reason why I wanted to get into journalism, because I wasn't good at math. So I was able to recognize that very quickly. So for someone like Bill Russell, who, you know, where do you start? I mean, you hear all the stories, you hear all the social justice and civil rights movement that he did, and everything he was a part of, with marching with Dr. Martin Luther King and standing with Muhammad Ali. And my first interaction with Bill Russell is watching him spill a bunch of mustard on his shirt at a golf tournament, and then him laughing about it. And if you've ever been around Bill Russell, the man's laugh is about the most infectious laugh you've ever heard in your life. It's a cackle. You could hear it from 3 holes over on a golf course and know that that was Bill Russell. And he wasn't an easy personality for a lot of people, especially at those golf tournaments, because so many people would be there for autographs and pictures and be able to interact with these celebrities. And if you knew Bill Russell, he did not sign unless he was paid. And he comes from a different age, and as a result, his signature was one of the most valuable signatures in all of sports, because of the fact he did not sign. But he'd sit there and have a conversation with you for 10, 15 minutes. I remember, a friend of mine who was a big autograph collector and, opened up a business around autographs. And one time finding out the hard way that Bill Russell wouldn't sign your autograph. And he's got this kind of shaved head, and, a Mexican dude with shaved head. And he goes, who? And he's looking at his head. He goes, who did that to you? Your mom? And my buddy just looks at me. He goes, is Bill Russell talking shit about my mom? I said, no, dude. He's talking shit about you. So like, it was just like this fun moment, and it was always like that. You'd see, I remember being on a golf course one time. It was a Joe Morgan golf tournament in Granite Bay. And you've got Bill Russell and Jim Brown, two dudes who were just unbelievable important in the history of American sports. And they're and Michael Jordan's in the same tournament, but the two of them are just literally, shooting the breeze on the driving range. And that's most of my Bill Russell memories. And then of course you get to basketball, and certainly, James, you do this long enough, you're doing NBA finals, you're seeing him every year, comes to summer league, loves flipping people off. I love the people that gravitate towards him. And I remember his last trip, and I actually shared some stuff on Instagram the other day of the memory when he came to Arco before they closed it up. And you got DeMarcus Cousins and Rudy Gay, and they're going out of their way to go up and shake Mr. Russell's hand, and and spend some time with him even right before the game. And then he sat courtside with Vivek, and he had a good relationship with Vlade Divac. So and of course that he's part of the fabric of Sacramento Kings. It was never a great situation during his time here in Sacramento, but certainly the that ownership at the time wanted to bring him in and think some of the winning ways would kind of rub off. They didn't, but it was fun hearing stories from Jerry Reynolds. I caught up with him the day that Mr. Russell passed, and he shared some memories. And of course, Jerry was the head coach. Bill's hired as GM and head coach, so they kept Jerry on as an assistant. He goes 58 games, and he goes back into the front office, and Jerry Reynolds, succeeds him. But as he says, it's like you've got Bill Russell, you've got um, Bill Russell, and he had I'm trying to remember the other assistant coach he had. Um,
Oh,
it was with the Knicks, the old Knicks legend.
yeah, it was
Um,
a huge, yeah.
Trying to remember right offhand, I can't. But yeah, it was the two of them and Jerry Reynolds. So uh, just the stories that he has and how it took about a month for him to earn Mr. Russell's trust was pretty incredible. And those stories that Jerry told, and I'm happy that a lot of media, ESPN, NBA TV, have done kind of the Bill Russell story the right way over the past couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, his time in Sacramento was not good at all. I
No.
mean, it was not good. And actually, if you go back and look at some of the transactions, they had Phil Johnson as an assistant, but I can't remember who the other assistant was at. Um,
It's
yeah,
not. I keep wanting to say Earl Monroe. No, it was not Walt Frazier. It was not Earl Monroe. Who's the other? Oh, gosh, someone in the chat's going to put it up. They're going to look it up for
yeah,
us.
I can't remember either. I remember seeing pictures of it. Yeah, you brought up a couple of things. Oh, Willis Reed.
Willis Reed. What's
That's
wrong
who it
with me?
was. Yeah, Willis
Long
Reed.
day, guys. Long day. I've been in
Long
the
day.
sun. Can you tell?
Yeah. Yeah, you got a little shine to you. You got a little
Yeah.
shine to you, Sean. Yeah, I try to avoid that sun thing. You brought up a couple of things when it came to, like I grew up going to baseball card shows and card shows, and so I grew up in the era where if you were going to get an autograph, almost always you had to pay for it. And I got some cool autographs around Sacramento when I was a kid. Greg Vaughn, Kevin Johnson, but others, and I have a ton of autographed baseballs and stuff like that. But I would never fault somebody for charging for an autograph. I know people yell and scream at players now, and a lot of times it gets a little out of hand. We saw that weird situation at the All Star game where the guy like elbowed the kid in front of him trying to get an autograph.
Oh
And I've
yeah,
been there.
baseball. That was crazy.
Yeah, and I remember sitting outside the Coliseum after a game one night, and we were waiting for autograph for players to come out to sign autographs, and Steve Howe came out and was just like he was talking to some guy, and the guy's like, "Yeah, man, it's good to see you out here. You seems like you got through a lot of your struggles." He's like, "Yeah," in front of a group of kids, he's smoking menthols, and he's like, "Yeah, I kicked the coke." I stopped drinking, but I can't seem to shake these menthols. And he's just smoking and right in front of a bunch of kids. It was just a different era. But, like my first games going to Oakland, I went and saw the A's and the Detroit Tigers, and Lou Whitaker and Alan Trammell both came over and signed autographs for me. Mark McGuire, I reached over the dugout and he signed an 87 tops, which is upstairs in my safe still. Yeah, I mean, like, it's just a different era, so I would never fault somebody. Every time I was around, like it was always a crowd of people, but also, he was older, and so a lot of people were sort of like protecting, making sure that he had a clear walkway, making sure that people weren't surrounding him and getting awkward, and it's tough because he's a guy. Rarely do we see a 7'1" man live to 88 years old. It just doesn't happen, So he was an incredible, ambassador for the game. As far as his time in Sacramento, Sean, I went back and he did do he drafted Ricky Berry. Um, he also drafted Vinny Del Negro. He drafted
Purvis Ellison, right? Yeah,
Purvis
number one.
Ellison. Yeah, which I mean, look, the funny thing, like they didn't even go and visit Purvis before. They had never met him before they actually drafted him,
Wow.
or even seen him in person. But that's just kind of that time of the NBA. He also traded for Wayman Tisdale. He traded for Rodney McRae. He traded for Ralph Sampson, which ended up being a horrible trade. And then, he was in a little bit of a dark time as well. He was there when Ricky Berry passed away, and which was a horrible event. And, like that whole entire story is just tragic. And he was actually there meeting with Ricky Berry's parents when the phone call came in that Ricky had passed away. But I don't want to get too dark into it. But what was you went and hung out with Jerry? Just what was the overall takeaway from Jerry? Because I've always enjoyed Jerry's perspective on Bill Russell.
Yeah, I mean, it was a hero of his, and he got the chance to work and share an office and be right down the hall at one point, and then share an office with him and be on the road with him, and it was a pinch me moment. And I kind of joked. I said, "Man, we all know your close relationship with Larry Bird, both coming from French Lick, Indiana, and here you are, working with Bill Russell and spending the time that you did with him in the NBA and even here in the Kings." I'm like, you really had great relationships with, two of the cornerstones of the Boston Celtics franchise, and it's just funny how life works, and he shared so many great memories about the guy, and just how he earned the trust, and how that was really difficult, and how players, I mean, they would go on the road, James, and they'd have, no one knew about the Kings, but all they wanted to see was Bill Russell. I mean, that was the show. That was like, Michael Jordan or Kobe or LeBron coming in and having all of a sudden taking over as head coach of the team. It's like that was the draw to see the Kings, and he's coaching the likes of Reggie Theus and LaSalle Thompson, and you mentioned some of the draft successes and the trades. He also, I was reminded, Henry Turner went undrafted. Our good friend Henry Turner on Kings Radio, but Bill Russell brought him into Sacramento the first time. That was his first stint there. So just really great memories, and how, even play, like you go back to it always kind of comes back to the autograph thing, because like I remember seeing him turn down NBA players. There was a story somebody had told me about, I think it was like, I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it might have been Lenny Wilkins. During the NBA 50, they wanted, Bill to sign something. He turned and was like, "No, I don't sign. I don't sign. I don't sign," and wouldn't do it. And he was kind of a stickler. And there was the cool story. I remember he wrote this book called Russell Rules, and for a guy who didn't sign, he did a book signing, and he did it in 4 cities. It was San Francisco, of course, where he played college; Seattle, where he lived; Sacramento, where he played, or where he would, was a head coach and GM; and Boston, of course. And that was it. And so I went and got a book. It went to if you ever went to Birdcage back in the day on Citrus Heights, up at Citrus Heights off Sunrise. The Barnes and Noble there on Birdcage is where he did a signing. So I have the book. I treasure it. To Sean, best wishes, Bill Russell, and it's pretty great. But yeah, even Jerry knew that. He said the guy would end up talking to somebody for 10 minutes about why he wouldn't sign, when all he could, might be easier just to sign, but they'd be in restaurants together and just inundated all the time.
Would he take money?
No,
or was it funny. Always had to be in a setting?
Yeah, I think it had to be, like obviously you go into a show, like you mentioned the card shows that you did. I remember, someone like Vida Blue. Vida Blue is kind of notorious for charging people for autographs. And again, it's a different era. They don't make the money that that these players make today. And, you think of somebody like Juan Soto, who just turned down a $440 million contract. And then you think of Vida Blue, who you might play golf with one day or run into him at a golf course and ask him for a signature, and he'll charge you $10 or whatever. So yeah, man, it's a bit wild, but different era, different time. And what a great life, man. I mean, just to have the impact he did, not just in the NBA, not just in college basketball. I mean, think about it. He won 2 back-to-back titles at USF. Like, when's the ever time? You don't hear USF ever in college basketball lore, unless he's there winning titles. They're never in the tournament. So just pretty incredible.
Yeah, he did live an amazing life for sure. Okay, so again, we're going to do things a little differently today, just because, it's a dog days of summer, and Sean and I are going to field questions. Sean does not have the ability to read questions, but if you guys want to throw questions out to us, we will definitely field them here on the podcast. We do have little bits of news here and there. Matt Coleman left the G League, the Stockton Kings, and signed in Istanbul, Turkey. This is one of those things that has kind of been, on the horizon for a little while. There was even a possibility of him leaving Summer League, right, Sean, and going and taking this job. But he's a guy that he needs to make his money, and this is a good avenue for him to do it. So, going overseas and getting some quality experience against big time professional players. What are your thoughts, and what do you think the impact is on the Stockton Kings?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to wish him well. I mean, he had to make a move. I think it was one that was expected. I think they didn't think they were going to really able to keep Matt. And talking to him a little bit in summer league, he knew that was kind of what was on the horizon for him. And I think he was holding out just a little bit longer to see if somebody would be able to give him an invite or some sort of guarantee, similar to like what you just saw Jared Roden, who was on the Kings summer league team and just jumped over to Portland, and he's got kind of a non-guaranteed for 1 year deal and more of a training camp thing, but will likely filter into something that filters into their G League program likely. So yeah, Matt's a scorer, and they'll be able to fill the role pretty easily. And I think they've got a lot of guys that they're looking at for Stockton, and someone like Christian Terrell could be part of it. Sac State product who was there last year, and they're pretty high on. So I'd like to see some of those guys that were part of summer league trickle over there, and I think the overseas opportunity for someone like Matt Coleman is great because I mean, look at I've talked about the Gabe Vincent journey, and here we have Chima Maneki, who's bounced from Davis and played internationally, and now has ended up with the Kings. And there's no blueprint for making the NBA these days, and some of these guys are utilizing different avenues. And if this gets them noticed, who knows? Will we see Matt Coleman in a couple of years?
Yeah. No. Hey, look, Deuce and Mo is here. Look at that.
What?
Hey.
What?
And Brennan is in here too. Brennan, shouldn't you be watching bad baseball and sweltering heat? Just
Brendan's going to look down at his phone and he's going to get plowed by a freaking foul ball.
I've not once have I gone to a River Cats game where a fan didn't catch a line drive in the head. Every single time. We
The
talked.
worst is the carom when it bounces off the wall and then comes back. It's like you did your part, okay, and then you don't watch it all the way, hit the wall, and come back and knock you out.
I don't want to bash on that field because it's beautiful and it's always been so well maintained. But as you go down the first base line, the third base line, as you start going further and further out, the seats don't face home plate. They don't tilt towards home plate. So most major league stadiums wrap around a little bit, and the seats are tilted so you're facing home plate. That's not the case at what used to be Rayleigh Field. I don't know what they're calling it now.
Sutter Health Park.
Oh, well, I should know that because
Yeah.
Sutter Health Park. So anyway, the seats go straight out, and they don't really have a tilt to them, and they're narrow. That's the other thing. So I remember going to games with a couple of big guys, and you're sitting there like squished in, and then your head's tilted the whole way, like the whole time watching the game over there. And it's just, to me, it's kind of a weird setup. But we did have a question. We had a question earlier about, why can't, here, I'll throw this up. Can you explain why Vivek can't invest in an MLS team? He can.
Yeah, he does.
Oh,
So I suppose. I mean, I can't imagine that. You got me now.
yeah, you're back. You're back. Yep. Maybe he's not.
Okay,
Oh,
sorry about that. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, oh, you got me now. You good?
yeah. We're good. Go ahead. Yeah, you're fine.
Sorry. No, I guess if he wanted to, he could. I don't think this investment group or the people that are around it finagle, and I don't think they'd necessarily boot him. But I don't think it's a matter of that. I just who
Sean,
make it.
Sean keeps cutting in and out. Hopefully he
Still
squares
there?
up his signal, but I'll take the question while Sean figures out his signal. Yeah, what Sean is saying basically is the people who currently own and run the Sacramento Republic, they aren't on the greatest of terms with Vivek, or they haven't been historically, because they are all part. Well, Kevin Nagel is a part owner of the Sacramento Kings. He did sell part of his shares a couple of years ago when we had sort of that exodus, but he is part of a different group that has, a Sacramento based group that has multiple percentages of shares. So he is still an owner. And just the dynamic in Sacramento of ownership, and I think Vivek too. He wants to run the show his way, especially with the Kings. And I think there are other people that would like to run the MLS team their way. And unfortunately, that hasn't been conducive to finding a big time investor that would help them get to the MLS level. I don't know if they will. Unfortunately, they did have what we talked about last week, two investors, right, Sean, at the big game.
Yeah, two people who are of interest. I'm hoping to be able to put their name out soon. Still doing a little bit of vetting, but yeah, two people who are definitely kicking the tires on this thing. They saw the fan support. I don't think there's any shortage of interest from people who want to invest, but you need that whale. Saw Kings relocation saga. You still need that whale.
Yeah, you need someone who's willing to not just put up big money for the team, but also big money to bump up to the MLS and big money to build the arena, the stadium, the outdoor stadium that would have to be built in the rail yards in order to lure the MLS in. So you're probably talking, I don't know, 3, 4, 500 million, right? And so whoever were to take on that role would also they'd have to be able to support a team and be functional members of the MLS family. And the MLS is at this stage where they're really enjoying picking off guys from the Premier League or from European clubs down at the end of their careers. So we're seeing not Christian Bale, Bale. Why am I drawing a blank? We're seeing like a lot of really big name players from overseas come over and finish their careers at the MLS level, like David Beckham did, or he's come over and been part of a franchise and stuff like that. So yeah, it's an interesting question, and I wish it could get figured out, but I don't think Vivek is going to be the answer to MLS.
It's also tough too because you're talking about people who, when they put their money up, they're going to want power. They want it
Control.
done their way. Yeah, and I think
Thanks,
business is
Tyler.
tough.
Gareth Bell.
Oh, there you go.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, Gareth
he,
Gareth Bell and
he,
Ibrahimovic. Yeah.
you knew I wasn't going to bail you out. I don't know shit about soccer, so that was going to be tough.
My son was upstairs playing with a really like high level Gareth Bale card in FIFA just a few minutes ago. I know who Gareth Bell is. He's the man bun. He's the guy with a little man bun. Yeah.
Okay,
So, who's fast, but he always gets hurt.
they probably have one on every team, right? A man bun on every single team.
Yeah, but he's one of those guys. It's like that's his signature thing. Yeah. So, like Ibrahimovic is a stud, and all those guys are kind of coming over and hanging out. Jason Siebenthal, you asked if Trista Crick is going to be a future guest on the Kingsbeat podcast. That's a possibility. Sean, have you had the pleasure of meeting Trista?
Yeah, I don't know that she would remember it. I remember.
Oh,
I remember. It was a brief moment during like a media day at the finals a few years ago, and I think she was doing some stuff in the Bay Area before she was doing her Bet Online stuff. I think that's what she does now. I don't know the
mm-hmm.
company she's with, but I know she's a familiar face on the radio, and yeah, she was very kind. I just had a brief interaction with her, but yeah, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, she's a crack up. Yeah, she might be someone that we would figure out a way to get on the podcast. I know she just did the Do Some Mo show She's on with D'Lo and Casey all the time, and she's come on quite a few times while I'm on doing the show, and she's just a wild card. Like she says whatever pops into her head. She had a really fun story, Sean, about sitting in front of Davion Mitchell at Summer League, and he just like mystery science theater the living s out of it, and just sat there and talked trash about every player on the court, which was fun. She said she actually had to get up and go to the restroom, and then just held it because she was like, "Oh, I'm not leaving my seat and losing my seat because this is too good." Like what she was hearing from Davion.
He had to involve himself in the game one way or the other, right?
Yeah, he is an epic trash talker, I guess, off the court. I hope that he brings that to the court, right?
Like if he became like a Patrick Beverly, how cool would that be?
Yeah, do you think that's in him? Like, I think
No,
the
no.
player, Patrick Beverly, the player, is in him. But
Yes.
Patrick Beverly, the epic, like, trash talking fool, do you think that's in him?
I don't know, man. Like it would be. I know he can wisecrack, but I just don't see him being that much of a trash talker to where, he can kind of get personal and get in you that way and try to disrupt you. And I don't know, like Patrick Beverly's a legitimate, like, for lack of a better term, asshole on the court. I don't see Davion Mitchell having that gene.
That's funny. I would like to see it. I would like to see him try at least. Again, it takes a little bit of a different person. Like I love to trash talk when I play sports, but not like that where you're almost like trash talking to fight, because that's what it always feels like with Pat Bev. Like he's bordering on, you're about to punch him at all times, and I like getting under somebody's skin a little bit and talking a little bit of trash, but I don't think I ever push it to that point where you're gonna get into a huge fight. But I mean, I think that's going to be one of those topics that we cover as we get towards training camp. What do you think his what are we going to see from Davion as far as like leadership and the way that he steps up in this next season?
Well, you can already see it, James. I mean, I think you saw it as well as I did with California Classic. I mean, the guy is, and I think it happened right before Tyrese Halliburton got traded, where all of a sudden he kind of stepped out of his shell a little bit and was he's so much more vocal. He seems so much more comfortable. And you can tell that the lack of success that the Kings have had over the 16 years. Granted, he's only had one, but it kind of bothers him. And I think he wants nothing more than to be able to, bring postseason success back to Sacramento. And it's something he completely embraces. And just talking to him and hearing what he's saying to teammates, hearing what discussions that they've been having with various people. He's just all about winning, man. Like the guy is uber competitive, and you hope that doesn't wane over, like, maybe you didn't experience a lot of success in your rookie season as a team. What if that trickles on for another year or two? Like, how does that damage that competitive spirit where you don't want a guy to get used to or comfortable with losing just because it happens so much? And that's one thing I always, uh, you admire someone like even DeMarcus Cousins. And granted, he wasn't perfect, but you're in the locker room and he's not just like, well, golly gee, on to the next one. Like he wore it, man. He absolutely wore it. Losing completely affected his psyche, his whole demeanor, his mood, all that stuff. And it was just, I like players like that. I like when players hate to lose more than they like to win.
Is it weird that we're so used to seeing players resign themselves to losing? I mean, because it's happened so much. I mean, I don't want to like put a bunch of people, just like you resign yourself to losing, you. But I think we certainly have seen over the course of the last, you know, decade and a half, plenty of players who just kind of like, okay, this
Yeah.
is what's going to happen. We're not getting out of this, and this is another season lost.
People just, they internalize things so differently. And, you know, I guess someone could say that there's nothing wrong with someone just being like, whatever, on to the next. and having that type of mentality, not dwelling on it. And, I know players who've gone home and, drunk themselves silly because of losses that they've had. I know guys that can just brush it off and say on to the next one because you don't want to harp on anything negative and focus on the negative. And I think it's interesting. I'm not obviously not a psychiatrist, but I find that interesting. I wonder what that does to somebody, and maybe somebody brushing it off and trying not to dwell on the negative and just move on to the next one and on to the next one, and having that type of mentality can be misconstrued as, well, this guy doesn't care. And I think that's unfair to a degree, but certainly there's other people that don't have the opportunity that other guys have. And if you're only playing like, well, maybe 8 minutes in a game, and the team loses, and it's like, well, yeah, just play me more. Like that, maybe that's a mentality that they have as well. So, yeah, man, I think everyone internalizes it differently. Certainly, if somebody just comes in and doesn't act professional, and certainly we've seen that, James, like that that should bother you, and that should bother the teammates and coaches as well.
Yeah. There's, I don't know. It's like there's apathy that happens. Like you watch kind of like people let go of the rope and like, oh, there's 57 games. We're 57 games in. It's time to call it. We're the Kings. We've seen it too often, and it's sort of weird when you do see it. You're just kind of like, oh man, they're just cashing it in. We got to that point, and you're always fighting it as a writer. Like, at what point do we get to that point? Are they still fighting? I don't
Right.
need them to sit there and tell me about how they still think they can make the playoffs, even though they just lost 5 out of 7, and they're totally falling apart. I don't need them to sit there and like keep relaying that they think that they're still in it. But at the same time, you can tell when someone has lost it, and it's just a different vibe.
The weirdest one is when you see it in fans. Like I think this past year, maybe the year before that, maybe it was a little bit more recognizable. But apathy among your fan base is the worst. And it's
Oh
not even
yeah,
just those that buy tickets. Like you're just, you just go quiet, and that's you want to be engaged. And but again, if the team goes out there and gets their head kicked in, then certainly you can understand it. But to me, it's almost, it's worse because the players obviously have a job to do. They're the ones paid to perform, and they have the expectation to win. But when you just go so long without winning, and then you see an apathy among the fan base, that kind of bothers me even more so.
yeah, it's tough. Okay, we got a question from Callum Lambert. We talked about Holmes playing behind Sabonis, maybe handicapping Rashawn by only playing him 10 to 15 minutes a game, but isn't that the same thing happening in Davion at the point? I think it's a good question, but the answer is no. And I'll tell you why. It's because at the guard position, Davion and De'Aaron can both play both spots, and they can both play plenty of minutes together. They can play plenty of minutes with one sitting on the bench playing. The Kings have a lot of options. I think it could be difficult to see. I think Fox will play 34, 35, 36 minutes a night. I think Davion will play 28 to 30. And then you're going to have to see Malik Monk still some minutes in that mix. And then you're going to see Kevin Huerter play, probably as a starter, and then slide to the 3 and play a lot of minutes at the 3. I think as of right now, like the way the roster is constructed, it kind of lends you to believe that we're going to see a lot more of those 4/5 guys, if you want to throw Terrence Davis in there as well, playing the 1, the 2, and the 3 like together in combination. So as of right now, like I still think you're going to get Harrison Barnes playing, close to 30 minutes a night at the 3, but those other 18 minutes are going to be stolen by a lot of different guys, including a bunch of the guards. So, Sean, is that what you're thinking as well?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think so. I mean, I kind of go back and forth with a lot of things that I would do personally, but we're not into training camp yet. I think somebody sees a signing like Matthew Dellavedova and knows what he's been capable of in his career, and wants to factor him in right away. And I just caution people, like, I don't think that's going to be something that you're going to see a whole hell of a lot of. Hope I'm wrong, because you know it'd be nice to see what he's, to see that type of player again, that gritty, as you like to call dirty player too. I think they need some of that. But at the same time, like this guy played in Australia last year, didn't really play in the NBA much in the past couple years,
4 years,
and
like
yeah, man, like
I think
that's
it's 118 games over 4 years.
yeah, it's just that's rough. And so I just don't know that he'll ever be able to get it back. I don't know that he can still play. So I do have question marks there. So, um, but to that point, like I think that between Fox and Davion, like I think your minutes right there are pretty right on. I can't imagine Davion getting as the guy who asked the question that it was only going to be like 15 minutes a game. No way. Like these, Davion's going to be playing. He's absolutely going to be playing. I think those will be between, like you said, 25, 30 minutes.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. Like, if we're going to compare it to the Rashawn Holmes situation, the problem is that Holmes and Sabonis are going to be difficult to play together, and so you, where you can still, 14, 15 minutes a game of Fox and Davion playing next to each other, you just can't do that. They could play, like I've kind of talked about. I think that you could probably run Rashawn Holmes and Sabonis out there 4 minutes a half together, and then that would put Holmes's minutes at around 20, 22 minutes a game. If you consider that Sabonis is going to play a substantial amount of minutes, like 34 to 36 minutes a night, I think that you could probably get those guys together for, like, again, 4 minutes a half. Whether it's stealing 2 minutes in the first and the second quarter, or the end of the first and the beginning of the second. I think you can figure it out, but I still think it's going to be very, very difficult.
Yeah, and I still think I know what I was told, and I know people like to hammer me for things that I was told and things that I had heard, but I think training camp is obviously going to be a moment to figure all that out. If you go into this camp in the next, what were we, 2 months away? What are we, a month away? 2 months away,
Yeah,
a little
we're
less.
about 5 weeks away. 5 weeks away,
Yeah,
I think. Oh, no,
yeah,
no, no,
I
no.
think
7 weeks. 7 weeks away.
7 weeks.
Yeah,
Okay, 5 weeks till you start seeing a lot of guys in town and
yeah.
competing and doing all that. But yeah, I mean, look, it, that's what training camp is for, and hopefully there's a move made before then. But it just seems like we're at a standstill right now for the most things.
Yeah. There was from Cool Raul. Do you think Metu will have a role this season? Why don't you go ahead and take that,
Cool,
Sean?
Raul. Yeah, I do. I really do. I think again, a lot will shake out in training camp and whether or not they can make a move. But I think they're excited to have Chimezi Metu and some of the steps that he made. Hopefully, he'll have a little bit more defined of a role. Maybe he won't be coming out there looking to chuck as much from the perimeter. But if he can, add the length and add to the team defense, obviously not a great one-on-one defender or individual defender, but team defense is where he'll really shine. There were some nice things. Remember that first game when Sabonis came to Sacramento, played that first game, and I think Mezzi was the recipient of a lot of dunks and a lot of feeds from Sabonis. So obviously you got some extra shooting on the team, so that you don't have to really rely on Mezzi the way they did if everyone stays healthy. But I think with Mike Brown there and having that familiarity with the Nigerian team, and having just a year under his belt, I think he can be a very impactful player.
I'm gonna take the counterpoint. I don't think Shmezi Metu will play much.
You don't think
Especially,
so?
yeah, I think we're gonna see a battle in camp between him and
Trey Lyles.
Trey Lyles to see who becomes really like the ninth/10th man in the rotation.
Yeah.
And that's going to be difficult because I think Trey Lyles is a guy that you can run the ball through. He's a guy that you probably can play with Holmes because of his ability to stretch the floor. So if you're going to play Holmes 12 minutes a game off the bench, I think the tandem of Holmes and Lyles makes more sense than the tandem of Metu and Holmes.
Yeah.
So that would be my first instinct. And like, look, I think there's also a possibility, like at the power forward spot, that Harrison Barnes is going to play plenty of minutes at the four, like he has in the past. I also think that if Keegan Murray is a player that the Kings believe he is, and that most people are starting to believe that he is around Sacramento, and even further, like outside of Sacramento, around the league, I think he's up for 28 to 30 minutes a game as a rookie. I think there's a good chance that he's that type of rookie that comes in and finds a substantial role and doesn't hurt you. He's a guy, I don't think he's going to hurt you. There are times where he'll help you, but I also don't think there's going to be a bunch of times where he's just getting torched on the defensive end or he's just not carrying his weight on the offensive end. I think he's too well put together to kind of be that guy. So if that's the case, like how are you going to find room for all of these players? And we haven't even really talked about Chima Moneki. We haven't talked about KZ Akbala. Like how do these guys fit in as well? And a lot of them they just don't. They're kind of going to be, like Alex Len. You're going to be on the outside looking in, and it's not because you did something wrong. It's because of the depth in front of you, and you can't get around it. And so, I think it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out. But I don't put a lot of stock in anything we saw with the Nigerian national team. I think it's nice that Mike Brown has a bunch of players, a bunch of coaches that he's comfortable with. But I don't think that any of those guys are just right now, written in pen that they're going to play X amount of minutes. I think it's going to be a little more difficult than that.
I think, yeah, and I don't necessarily disagree. I just think in terms of what Mezzi can bring and, compared to Trey Lyles, like if that's the guy you're having to necessarily beat out for your time, and I agree with you with Keegan, even if he doesn't start right away, he's going to factor in play. Like the guy is going to be somebody that's going to have pretty bulk minutes, whether it's starting or it's off the bench. I don't think it's necessarily if he. I was cautioning people that maybe he does come off the bench early on, but it certainly won't stay that way throughout the season. I really feel like he's going to earn his way into the starting five eventually, whenever that is, whether it's a week from then, month from then, whatever. I do think that that'll happen at some point, but I also feel like, again, you have position battles, you have training camp, you have injuries. Guys can factor in however you see it. Like I honestly feel like Chimezie can be a presence for them, especially with some of the physicality he's shown. And it's really going to be like, what do they value? And I think when it comes to someone like Trey Lyles, who is primarily known for scoring, I feel like they're going to have enough scoring to me to where I wouldn't necessarily bet on Trey Lyles being a big factor for this team. And if you ask me between the two, I'd probably lean more towards Metu than Lyles. But I don't know. I think that's stuff that we're going to have to see play themselves out a little bit with Mike Brown and his staff. And, again, injuries, all those things kind of come into play a little bit. And everyone's going to get opportunity at some point. But as we mentioned a couple podcasts ago, I don't think Mike Brown's going to go that deep into a rotation. Like, I don't think it's going to be 10. I think it'll probably be more like 9. And if they start to struggle,
9, yeah,
8.5, yeah, I think if they start to struggle, like, maybe they'll, but I think they're going to want like a 20-25 game sample size of an 8 to 9 man rotation.
Yeah, I mean that's difficult because I think if there is a true 8.5, 9 man rotation, I think if there's an 8.5, the half is Rashawn Holmes. If there's a 9, then Holmes is fully part of that. But I think it's going to be very difficult because that means that, Barnes is going to play 4 and that Holmes is going to play 4 next to Sabonis. And you're going to see a ton of Herter at the 3. So we have a question from Megan. How much better is our shooting this year, do you think? What do you think, Sean?
Well, what I think is it's night and day better. I mean, you've got more depth at shooting compared to just having one person or someone who's decent. Like you've got some snipers on this team now, and that you needed to have that around the likes of Domantas Sabonis, and hopefully De'Aaron Fox can not be as inconsistent shooting the ball as he was last year, but just by adding somebody like Kevin Huerter and Malik Monk, that's going to go a long way. And then you have Keegan Murray. Clearly, you saw what he did in the summer league. You know what he's done in college. I mean, the guy can extend the floor. So I like those pieces a lot. I think it's going to really help their depth. I think this is what we've had conversations over the past year about the difference between what there's depth and then there's quality depth. And I think they've got quality depth especially when it comes from shooting positions.
Yeah, I am full agreement. I think basically the Kings added three guys that are 38 to 40% shooters consistently at the NBA level. If you look at Harrison Barnes, at who's better than that, like a 40 plus, like that's a really good start. But then I'll also add in that I think Sabonis is going to be better shooting the three than he was last year. I think Fox is going to be better because a lot more of his shots will come off the catch and shoot as opposed to creating. And then I think the same goes for Davion Mitchell. I think his numbers, I I will just be shocked if he's not at least like a career 36% shooter from three. Like everything tells me that he should be a much better shooter than he is. He's so under control. He always has the same shooting motion. Everything is repeatable. Everything is solid. The mechanics are perfect. I think he'll be 36, maybe even higher. And so if you're going to be able to have we talk about the rotation, and if you got one guy in the rotation who's not shooting threes, and that would be Rashawn Holmes, and the other eight guys are all reasonable, 32% or better, you're going to be a really, really good three-point shooting team. And I think, again, Fox averaged 37 per game, 37% shooting from three like 2 years ago. He can get back to that. I don't know if he can get back to 37, but he can get to 34, 35. He's going to be almost unstoppable as a scorer. If you can get Sabonis back up to like the 34, 35%, and then you see Davion take that leap, this is going to be one of the better three-point shooting teams in the league. And even look at the end of last season where you had DiVincenzo and you had Justin Holiday, you had Chimezie Metu playing major minutes. Like those guys did not consistently hit wide open threes. Wide open threes. They missed time and time and time again. That won't be the case this year. Herter is way too good of a pure shooter. And so is Monk. Monk is a creator, but he can really shoot the ball. And so I think they're going to be very, very good from three. Just my
Yeah,
opinion.
and we didn't even mention Harrison. It's like that's the guy I'm always mad at that doesn't take more shots. I know
Yeah.
Luke Walton was shared that frustration, and a lot of his teammates do too. It's like Harrison Barnes needs to shoot the ball on this team, and I think now it might even create more opportunity for him for the simple fact that you've had so much shooting around him.
Yeah. And, you bring up, Megan, you brought up Terrence Davis. Terrence Davis, again, last training camp was around the team. They said he was the best three-point shooter that they had, that he was just knocked down. He hit everything. If he's right, it's going to be difficult to play five guards. That's just, even if you're stealing a bunch of minutes at the three, it's still going to be difficult to play that many guards. But if he does get an opportunity, he has the potential to be a 38 to 40% shooter too. I don't consider him in like the elite range. I think him and Monk both have that little bit that you think, okay, they can consistently do 38%, but can they take that next step and be like 42, 43%? I don't know. But I think Herter can for sure. And I even think that, like, again, just to go, I think Davion just has all kinds of potential to be a big time knockdown shooter at whatever position, the one or the two. Uh, let's see what else we got in here. Yes,
It kills me not to be able to see these comments because it's my favorite part.
yeah. Gaurav asked, "Did we catch Vivek on the Point Forward podcast with Iguodala and Evan Turner?" I did
I
not.
Yeah, I caught the first 5 minutes, and I keep meaning to go back to it and haven't gotten it yet. But um, yeah, I think he goes down some roads. I haven't seen a lot of feedback from it, but I've heard somebody said, "Hey, you need to hear it." So it's on my to do list. By Thursday, I'll have listened to it. I promise.
Yeah, I'll put it on my list of things to do too. I don't aggregate content anymore at all. So, like, because that's not what the Kings beat is. We're trying to get away from aggregation. Now, if there's a trade or something, I make sure to credit whoever broke the story and all that. But like, I don't go back and watch a bunch of podcasts that other people do with people like Vivek, and then write off of it. That's something that I did for way too long, and it's not fun to do, especially during the off season. I'd prefer to go get my own content. But it's an interesting it's interesting that they're letting him out there because we haven't spoken to Vivek in a long time, like on the record, right? There isn't a bunch of like real
Well,
on
not
the
about
record.
basketball. Yeah, it's tough
Yeah.
because this last season he did a some really great investment stuff and some youth things, and I had a few opportunities to talk to him on the record, and asked him like one very brief generic question about the Kings, and I told him afterwards. I said I look forward to hopefully talking to you about your basketball team in the near future, and hopefully that'll happen. I think I think he's I it's this Jekyll and Hyde thing because I know sometimes people will cringe at some of the things that he says, but I think there is some brilliance to it in the sense of being a brilliant man, not necessarily this brilliant basketball mind. But I think if you take it with a grain of salt, and he can at least talk about things in a way that would be very interesting and enlightening. That's no we need. It's no reason. It's not to say that I think I want to talk to him X and O's like he's Phil Jackson or something like that, or Eric Spoelstra. I don't, but I would like to talk to him about the state of the basketball team and some of the things that have happened, and hopefully that can happen in the not too distant future.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. Like I think a lot of the things you've heard about Vivek that just keep getting regurgitated again and again and again, they were actually like they were used as ways to discredit him early or to make sure that people understood that this wasn't a normal situation. So, like the 4-on-5 thing, it's not like Vivek went to practice and started like diagramming for the team how the 4-on-5 cherry picking thing would work. That at least not that I know. It was something that was brought up in like a basketball meeting and sort of chopped down pretty quickly. But somebody used that as a way to say, well, look, this is what I'm dealing with. I'm dealing with someone who believes in a 4-on-5 thing. And it was put out there in a way to make Vivek look like he was incompetent or and to make someone else look like their job situation was not good and they were around someone who maybe wasn't stable. And so I think a lot of the stories that we've heard over the course of time, they fit into that. Now, again, Sean and I both had one-on-one interviews with Vivek when they fired Michael Malone and he started talking about the Sousa band and the marching band versus the jazz band leader. That was weird. And there's also something that I'll tell people, like dealing with Vivek as many times as I have, especially at these events where he's doing some business thing or he's doing some charity thing or something. They always do like a Q&A. So first Vivek gets up and he gives like a 10-minute speech. And then when they do a Q&A, people will ask him about things that he said in the speech. And Vivek will rewind in his head and to that moment in the speech and then repeat the speech, that portion of the speech as his answer. It's really interesting the way his brain works and to watch him. And I've always thought like he's pretty brilliant. I've been able to meet him away from the arena, away from the basketball gym, and he's very nice. He's always been very thoughtful, and like my wife has met him, and he was very nice, and shook hands, remembered her name, stuff like that. But like just as far as the basketball side, I think that he's been thrown under the bus plenty of times, and I think he's probably a little gun shy, and the people around him are a little gun shy as well on putting him back out there and letting him say things because they're worried about him being like, again, aggregated for just saying like one sentence in a 10-minute conversation that just keeps sticking out to people and keep picking on that scab that he is a little strange or different.
Did the person who left that comment did they happen to hear it? Like, did they hear the? I wonder if there was a standout moment if they had heard the interview with Evan Turner and Andre Iguodala.
Yeah, I don't know. There it is. Gaurav, like hit us up in the chat if you actually have, if you actually got something out of it. But BW, we kind of covered this. Who's going to get some majority minutes at the three? To be honest with you, I think it's Kevin Herter, because I think you got to get a bunch of minutes at the 1, the 2. You got Davion, you got Malik Monk, you've got De'Aaron Fox, who are all going to play major minutes. And at 6-7, I think he'll slide over and play a little bit. Um, at this point, how likely will Barnes and Holmes be on the opening night roster? What do you got, Sean?
I mean, I don't have a crystal ball any more than he does. I mean, I think it's entirely possible and feasible. I think it's something that people are kind of just resigning themselves to a little bit at this point. But yeah, there's still a lot of offseason left, and I'm expecting a move, but much like we talk about a lot over the past year, like we expected a lot last year. So
Yeah,
we'll see. We'll see.
like, we don't want to be burned by the same exact thing that's happened time and time again, where you're waiting for something to happen and then it doesn't. I think that the Kings are still open to plenty of things. If I were a betting man, I would say that it's more likely that Holmes is on the roster than Barnes. But at this point, I would also venture that both of them will probably be on the roster. That may not be the first choice of anyone around, but it will actually. I think it's part of what is happening. You know. Let's see. I'll put this up. Can you see these when I put them up, Sean?
Yeah, that one says, James is defending Vivek. Never thought I'd see the day.
Yeah.
With the, is that a worried emoji? Oh, it's DB. DB. Hi, buddy.
Yeah, it's DB.
Climb
Yeah,
off the ledge.
look, I want to be fair to him, and again, all the things he's done downtown are, to me, it's really, really remarkable.
It
What's been
comes down to this,
accomplished.
James. Like it's not to. I like. Yes, there are cringeworthy moments, right?
Yeah,
Like, don't take him too literally, I guess, and take it with a grain of salt. This is an owner. This isn't your GM. Granted, he's a voice in the room, and he's a big voice in the room. But we don't. Like, I feel like people tend to take some of the things he said in the past a little too literally. There's definitely cringeworthiness. I get it. But look, it hasn't been good. And I think if this team was in the playoffs perennially, some of that stuff wouldn't matter as much. But it kind of compounds a little bit, and that becomes the loudest thing in the room when it comes to Vivek Ranadive. So, and that it's like you said, those cringeworthy moments are reasons why you don't see him out there as much anymore. Or because we saw him when he first took over this team. He was running press conferences. He's out there with, his head coach. He's out there with his GM. He's out there with a player. He's out there with an extension. They gave DeMarcus Cousins an extension, and he's out there with him as well, front and center and able to talk. He wanted to be Mark Cuban in that regard. So maybe not as much as that, and certainly not somebody who's just going to be completely exiled and not talk. I think you want to hear from him from time to time. Maybe some people don't. I do. I'd like to hear his thoughts on on the organization and where it's been over the past few years.
yeah, and I would even say, like, my biggest issue with Vivek, it's probably has nothing to do with basketball. Of course, we can go back to the Malone situation and the weird finger pointing that went on. And I mean, I still think that there was weird finger pointing going on like 2 years ago about the same exact situation. There's always been like a whose fault was that type situation, and everyone's got someone different that tells them something. But the truth is somewhere in the middle. And Vivek was a super, super young owner at that point, and bad things happen early on in when in your career. My biggest complaint with Vivek will always be this: it's that I think he signs off on hiring the wrong people to put around him, and he's done it more than once. And like, if you can't see like people with bad motives, then that's a problem. And so I think he's done it repeatedly enough that I kind of go, okay, I don't feel comfortable with this. Like, I don't think that's, as an owner, I think you've made too many mistakes behind the scenes with the people that you've hired, or the people that you fired, or the people that you brought in to replace somebody else that was really good at their job, but you felt like, or you got talked into bringing someone else in to replace that person and just made foolish mistakes in that regard. And a lot of that I just like flat out the fact that Pete Youngman is not the trainer for the Sacramento Kings to me is one of the worst things that I've seen happen in the last 12 years of covering the team. And it's something that I, even at this point, could have been rectified. You could have gone back and tried to bring him back in the fold. And I know he wasn't necessarily fired per se, but the way that the whole situation went down was unpleasant. And Pete's too good of a person, too good of a representative of your franchise, had been there too long, had done too much good, especially with his staff being just incredible and all of them going in and getting like their masters and their PhDs. He promoted the right things for the culture of the Sacramento Kings, and that's one where I would point to, like, whether Vivek did it himself or he had other people putting that idea in his ear. Those are things that were avoidable, and even still to this day, like, go get Pete. You don't have a trainer right now. Go get Pete. Like, I don't want to start some hashtag, but that's one of those things where, I think those are the issues that I have with him more than, like, did he have influence on whether the Kings chose Marvin Bagley over Luka? Like, at the end of the day, someone has raised their hand and fallen on their sword and said, that was me. And that person is Vlade Divac. And whether he had people telling him that that was a good idea, if Vivek was one of those people, he was one of many people that were trying to take credit for drafting Marvin Bagley at that point. So, again, that's just sort of a sidebar. Yeah, and again, yeah, I personally think I agree, DB. I look at all the things that he's done. I don't like seeing this from Robbie Foster, and I'm not sure that I haven't seen this, but I'm really hoping that that's not true.
I hope that's not true also.
Yeah, that would absolutely ruin my evening. Let's see. Anything else we got here? Final questions. Iguodala was one of the people he consulted regarding Mike Brown. Iguodala and Vivek have a good relationship. That's interesting, Gaurav. I'm gonna have to go back and read this, but listen to it, because it would be good to sort of hear the story behind the story when it comes to Mike Brown and that whole entire situation. It became such a Mike Brown versus Mark Jackson thing, and it really did kind of get odd and weird and all that stuff.
By the way, Chris, who's still he's wrapping up our wait, hi Chris. He's wrapping up our coverage for tonight on Fox 40. But yeah, he just told me about the Dodgers have released a statement on Vin Scully, and I guess that's true. That's tough.
Well, that's a bummer. That
Yeah.
puts a huge thing. That's brutal.
Awful. Yeah.
They come in threes.
What a life, though, man. What a life.
Yeah, an amazing life. Okay, Sean's got to get on the road. Let's do this. We got to finish up with the business of basketball.
Okay.
And I'm gonna do this, Sean.
Yep.
Pan out. Let's spend 2 minutes talking to Chris. Can Chris hear or no?
Uh-oh.
Yes.
That may have disrupted the force there, did it?
You moved it. Can Chris hear or no?
He cannot. I've got my earbuds in, but I can relay him a message, and he could probably might be able to tilt it and see what happens.
Yeah, so people who don't know Chris, Chris is the big man over at Fox 40 now, and he's young, he's super talented, and I think local television is better to have him around here. Where is Chris from? San Antonio?
Chris is he's from Houston originally, but he spent 10 years in Austin before coming out here. Austin's like his adopted home. And let me see if I can turn it slowly and not screw up our signal. Chris, tell us about yourself.
Yeah,
I'm relatively new to SAC. We're in August now, so I'm 8 months into the city, 8 months into living in Sacramento and working here. I consider Austin home, as Sean told you. Born and raised in Houston, but consider Austin home. Went to UT. I'm a Longhorn. Sean will tell you I try and relay every single nugget I can about Texas or UT history to him. And I'm a punk rock kid at heart. I went and saw Newfound. I took yesterday off of work to go see Newfound Glory and hang out in the pit and watch that show in Berkeley.
Okay, I would not have expected that. the punk rock thing. That's
Dude, we're
surprising
supposed
to
to
me.
go see Taking Back Sunday this
Saturday.
Saturday, which is interesting. Yeah,
Taking Back Sunday on Saturday.
on Saturday there'll be an Ace of Spades.
Interesting.
So buy us a
Our,
drink.
awesome. We'll get Chris on again.
We will.
Maybe we even do something like a happy hour with Chris where people can get to know him a little bit better. But it's good to have these guys, these local guys in. These guys that are coming in and actually feeding the beast in local television, because it still matters greatly in our area. So,
And
let's
by the way,
finish.
I'll say that I wouldn't say this I'll say this even if he was just sitting here. Like, he's one of the reasons. He's the biggest reason why I came to 40. Not only did he poach me, but seeing the way he works and what he's trying to do, and replacing a legend like Jim Crandall with a 3-person department is why I came here. And seeing the way he works and the stuff he knows, and I've worked with guys like Brian May, Ryan Yamamoto, Pierre Nugent, Lena Washington, Kevin John, like when I was at 10, and all those guys. There's one thing that's very, very much in common is they all work really, really hard, and they match kind of my work ethic. And this guy does that, and so I wouldn't go anywhere where the work ethic wouldn't be matched. And so it's huge. It's definitely huge. So be on the lookout for him, man. He'll be at pretty much every Kings game. He'll be across this region, and we're down here in Santa Clara for the next 2 days covering Niners and Deebo Samuel and some of the local ties here. So there's a lot going on.
All the fights
The fights.
at 49er training camp.
We watched it. We had to put our cameras were off at that point. They wouldn't let us shoot, and boy did we miss it.
We reported on it though.
We did report on it.
It was
Yeah.
on
Are
Fox
are you
40
guys
News at
watching
6.
Jimmy Garoppolo in the background, like do things like over
Not
there
only-
throwing balls by himself? How
Not
sad.
only did we see Jimmy Garoppolo, but I actually shot video of Garoppolo, and they're like, "Yeah, we don't shoot video of Jimmy G while he's rehabbing." I'm like, "Oh, is that what you call it?" He's throwing a football around, guys.
That's amazing. Okay, we're gonna finish with this one last thing.
Good.
Odds. Let's just get it from all of you because it's a question in the chat. Odds
Okay.
that Keegan Murray wins Rookie of the Year.
Odds that Keegan Murray wins Rookie of the Year. We'll let Chris go first.
I'll go 65%.
Oh,
Wow. I mean, how do you put an odd on it, like a percentage? I'm going to say
I think he's got a better shot than Davion Mitchell did, even though Mitchell also won Summer League MVP because he's a better offensive threat, and
Right.
obviously that carries so much more weight.
I'm going to go lower. I'm going to say 45%. Just because
Okay.
I love to be contrarian. No, I actually think Paolo Banchero is going to win it.
Yeah, I'm gonna go
I really do.
47-53. I'm gonna say 47%
Yeah.
that it's Keegan, 53% that it's Paolo Banchero. I said it before the draft. I'll say it again. I think there's a good chance that Paolo Banchero wins Rookie of the Year.
Sounds good.
All right, so that's going to do it for this edition of the Kings Beat podcast. If you guys are still watching, give us a thumbs up. If you're new to the show, subscribe. I don't know how you could be new to the show at this point, but subscribe. Subscribe to the Kings Beat. We'll have an off the record with the Kings Beat virtual happy hour coming up relatively soon because it's already the 2nd of August. So we will have that coming up relatively soon. We'll get a good guest again, and those are amazing and super fun. But thanks for Chris Tavares and Sean Cunningham joining us in the car outside of Levi Stadium. This is the dedication we're bringing to you here at the Kings Beat. So for Fox 40's Sean Cunningham and Chris Tavares, I am James Ham, your Kings insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We'll see you later this week.